Yeah, we're ready to rock and roll. I can't vouch for this camera past a certain point.
Hello, everyone. It's 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Jeff Koski. I, along with Deanne Lane, who's back in the corner, or Deanne Thomas, helped put this thing together. We appreciate you all being here very much. We appreciate our elected leaders being here very much, and we'll talk to them in a minute. But again, I wanted to say thanks to Deanne, my co-conspirator. She's a real community gem and actually a freshly minted Decatur hometown hero. So thanks to the folks at the church at Decatur Heights here. It's a great facility. Obviously, Deanne and I have helped organize some events here previously, so seems to work pretty well. They're easy to work with. So if you know anybody that's involved in the church here, thank them. They themselves, the church is a hometown hero. So we have a lot to be thankful for with them. Just wanted to point out it's December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, so let's keep that in mind as we move forward. Important day. Thanks to John Ridley for bringing this map unexpectedly, but right on target. The annexation map of Decatur. You take a look at it. We may be useful to us as we move along here. Thanks to Dan of Decatorish for taping this, so we'll have it to live in perpetuity, I suppose, or until the internet dies, whichever comes first, I'm not sure. And the last thing I'll say is, again, Deanne and I did this sort of because we thought it was important, and they all agreed to be here because they think it's important to be here. If you have any issues, if you will, about what's happening today, you can bring them to me. I've got pretty thick skin. I used to be a basketball referee for a couple of years, and so I've heard it all, right? So if you have problems, you can bring it to me. I'll deal with it. If you have any compliments, you can take it to Diane or give them to these folks. So that's how it works. But hopefully there won't be any problems or anything. So without further ado, most of you probably know the folks on the stage, but just so we're all on the same page about who is here, I'll just quickly run through introductions. You guys can just give a wave just so make sure everyone knows. From the Decatur City Commission, Patty Garrett. From the City Schools of Decatur Board, Garrett Goebel. From the City Schools of Decatur School Board, Annie Keola. From the City Schools of Decatur, Julie Rain. From the City Schools of Decatur, Lewis Jones. From the Decatur City Commission, Scott Drake. And from the Decatur City Commission, Fred Boykin. So that's who's here. Again, thank you very much. Thank you. I know it's Sunday, beautiful day outside. This worked out that we could all be here, and we're all appreciate it very much. Without further ado, let's dive right on in. We've gotten some questions that have come in online. We've gotten some questions from media members that have sent them to us. Some people have sent us emails. The idea here is that we're here for an hour-ish, and that's it, right? And that's not very long. We could go on. We could run on for many hours about this and many issues. The idea here is just to hear from our elected leaders. If this hopefully this will spark more conversation. We've got some cookies and some drinks set up in the fellowship hall afterwards, so the conversation can spill over there. Hopefully you know how to get in touch with these folks if you feel like you want to get in touch with them. They are very approachable people, as we found out by asking them to be here and having them show up. So you can send them emails. So there may be time for questions. I'm not necessarily guaranteeing it. Depends on what happens over the next hour. But it's, again, we're here for an hour, and we'll see where it goes from there. If discussion ensues, maybe we'll cut it off and go and pivot in a different direction. But that's the idea, just to get the ideas out there in the open. And if more discussion is needed, then hopefully you all can find ways to make that happen. The other thing is, we're not going to get into details about the map, about all the numbers and every issue. This isn't necessarily an information session. Hopefully you've come with a little bit of information. If you feel like you need more, Dan's website is a great place to go for that. So there's not necessarily a lot of expectations of educating you about every parcel on the map. It's more about understanding where we stand with the issues today. That's the idea of why we're here. So with that, if we could get started, I think it would be great if we could just kind of go down the line, and if you guys could give us an idea of, in your mind, where are we with annexation? Do you feel like you've gotten kind of all the facts that are in, and you're making decisions? Is annexation a fait accompli, or is it still something to be determined? And where do we go from here? What are the next steps? And what are your opinions about how we get there? So with that, Patty, if you don't mind starting us off, just kind of take that and run with it.
Okay. I think everybody can hear me without a microphone, or do we need to? Or is this
good like this? Yeah, that's on.
So the first, I guess, it is not a fait accompli for sure. There are a lot of moving parts, and I see DeKalb County Commissioner Kathy Gannon in the audience. Thank you for coming. Just to give you a little bit of background information, the City of Decatur has been looking at annexation for at least as long as I've been on the City Commission, for 5 years, and certainly for years before that as well. It's a part of our strategic plan from 2010, and looking at ways to sort of clean up our borders a little bit, but also increase our commercial tax base. I had a conversation just this past week with former Mayor Bill Floyd, and he is now a consultant for the DeKalb Municipal Association, which is the group of cities in DeKalb County that sort of work together. And he has been involved in the process with the with La Vista Hills and Tucker kind of coming together and identifying their borders. And he made the comment when we were talking about Decatur's annexation. He was a strong proponent for some annexation of commercial when he was mayor, and said, you know, if we were forming a new city now, there's no way really that it could have the kind of geographical boundaries and the commercial tax base that we currently have, with about 14 to 15% commercial tax base and the new cities, I think, according to former Mayor Floyd, was more, they're looking at more about 30% commercial tax base, and those are areas that will not have an independent school system. So I think we have been looking at it from both the opportunities and challenges for people that would become a part of an expanded city of Decatur, and also certainly for the citizens like you all that are here that are in the city of Decatur, because we know we want to be able to provide good services to everybody. We want to be able to manage our taxes appropriately, and we are not doing this in any sort of vacuum, not considering the needs of current citizens as well as the needs of our citizens with children, and working in concert with the school board, because we recognize it would have not only an impact on, you know, the tax base, but also an impact on our city schools and what that's going to look like. And there are a lot of moving parts. I think probably you all know that we have 4 state representatives for the city of Decatur. We have some that are represented by Mary Margaret Oliver. We have some people that are represented at the state level with Howard Mosby, some by Ron Mayo, and a few with Carla Drenner. So we're sort of in a little bit like ribbons throughout the city of Decatur. I've lived here 13 years. I've personally have had 3 different state representatives based on redistricting. I think it's important to know that we have been talking to elected officials, and at the state level, and that's going to be a big part of the conversation. There's no guarantee we're going to get any or all or any of what we are asking for. So the mayor pro tem have been working with other elected officials, meeting with neighborhood groups that are affected. Fred and Scott have met with property owners, commercial property owners. I've met with Elena Parent, I've met with a number of you that are here, as well as some other neighbors that are looked at, or are being considered as part of the annexation. So it is a complicated process, but I think it's a part of the city's long-term vision that would benefit the citizens in the short term and the long term. So I've had more than my 2 minutes. Go ahead.
My name is Garrett Goble. I'm a City Schools of Decatur board. Patty did a great job doing the big picture, and I guess one perspective I have as a school board member is to draw a line between what is the role of the schools and the role of the city. So I don't want to weigh in too heavily on those things which I view as being out of the purview of the school board. I will weigh in on the factors, the long term and the short term, of how does it affect the schools. And for me, it comes down to the balance of what's being annexed and how that affects the tax digest and student enrollments. For the last 8 years, we've had historically unprecedented growth in enrollments in Decatur, and I believe last year we were the fastest growing school district in the state of Georgia. And our enrollments have basically doubled over that period of time, while the tax digest has not grown at the same rate. So effectively, every year, we're taking our tax revenues from the tax digest and dividing it by a larger number, which means every year we have less money to spend per pupil. It's a great challenge to the school system, and it's a good challenge to have because we're a successful school system. So annexation, if it has the right balance of what's being annexed, can increase the tax digest in a way that doesn't increase student enrollments at the same rate. And to that extent, the map that Mr. Ridley has brought shows an annexation map that has obviously been given a lot of careful thought in that regard. So I guess some of the issues are, if we go back long enough in history, there was a time where Decatur's commercial tax digest was a greater percentage than the 15% that it is today. And so as we go forward, whether we annex or not, that's a problem if the commercial tax digest doesn't grow as fast as the residential tax digest. And that's a problem that we need to solve with or without annexation. So something worth looking at. The net impact of the annexation map we have would be to bring in significantly more tax dollars than, in my opinion, than expenditures for the school system over the long run. Now, the challenge is that if we were to add 700 or 800 students over the course of 1 year in a school system that is at a historic high enrollment level and that is currently going through a master plan to increase capacity for the students that we know are arriving at the middle school and high school, then we need to be able to build the capacity to house those students when they arrive. And that means that we need, so long term, there's some midterm, there's some very good appeal to how the tax digest would change and how that would affect our student revenues. The appeal is that it would not decrease our per student expenditures. We will most likely need to go back to the voters. Right now we're using a COPS, basically a lease purchase, to fund a phase 1 construction at the middle school and the high school. And there's a reason why we call it phase 1, is because we have a plan for a phase 2 and a phase 3 and a phase 4. And so some of those funds will need to go to the voters. And in a GO bond, that's a potential thing that we would want to see on the ballot. And a SPLOST, the voters to re-up on the SPLOST. And that would get us through 2 to 3 phases of growth that would potentially deal with the existing growth and possibly annexation growth. I don't want to keep going because everybody else will have a lot of things to say, and I want to get to the point where you all get to ask some questions as well, so I'll pass.
All right, thanks, Garrett. I'm Annie Kayola. You know, I was initially very probably concerned, and I'd even say turned off to the idea of annexation But as I dug into it further, and in particular looked at our budget projections, I became much more open-minded to the idea of annexation. And it's largely because our enrollment in the schools, as you all know, it's skyrocketing right now. I mean, it's unprecedented growth, and it's not sustainable. I mean, we just can't continue to experience the growth in the schools that we're experiencing and continue to deliver the quality of services that we're currently delivering to our students. And so much of it just comes down to money and classrooms and seats to put students in. And so I'm convinced that where we are now, especially when I look at our budget projections, this is not sustainable. We will quickly go into a deficit and be faced with having to raise the mill considerably if this continues without making some changes. So we have to do something in order to continue to be the quality school system that we currently are, and annexation presents a unique opportunity for that. I also feel like in the city of Decatur, we do tremendously well for our students and for our community members, people who don't have schools, don't have students in our schools. And so, you know, there's a part of me that, you know, doesn't believe in pulling the ladder up behind me. We've built a pretty remarkable thing here in Decatur, and to the extent we can expand what we have built and provide the same kinds of exceptional services for students and other community members who don't have students in our schools, I'd love to be able to do that. So there's some unique opportunities, I think some good opportunities that come along with annexation. There are also some challenges, and frankly I think that the schools are going to be hit with the most immediate and most difficult of challenges. You know, as I said, we're experiencing growth in enrollment that we've never seen before, and so annexation, as far as enrollment is concerned, just piles on what we're already experiencing. And so the questions become, how can we sustain what we're doing with annexation? Certainly there's going to be more tax dollars, and there will be more commercial tax dollars as well. But my concern is, you know, if and when annexation happens, if it takes effect January 1, 2016, I'm not sure when the effective date of it would be, but those students become ours overnight. I mean, 700-800 more students are ours overnight, and we don't have desks to put those students in. We don't have classrooms for them. We don't have the staff for them, and we can't fund that overnight either. It's going to take the schools some significant ramp-up time in order to prepare ourselves for the students that would be coming. And so as I think about that challenge and what we're going to need in order to prepare ourselves, I think of three things. One, we're going to need help with funding. I mean, in the short term, we are going to need help with funding that many more kids. And so I hope that we can work with the city closely in coming up with that funding. As we do our budget projections with annexation, we hit an immediate deficit north of $4 million in year one after annexation. And part of the reason is because we don't get our funding from the state until the following year. The state analyzes your enrollment in year one, you get the funding for those students in year two. So when we have a huge influx of students, 700 or 800 more kids, we're not going to get those state dollars until the following year. And so we need some help. We need some help from our city and from our other community partners in coming up with that funding to help us bridge that gap in year one. So number one thing we need is funding. Number two thing we need is land. We need real estate to build more schools. And currently Decatur is very dense. You can't find 6 acres, which is what the DOE requires to build a new school. You just can't find 6 available acres in the city of Decatur. Certainly annexation would present some more opportunities for that, especially in Area B, the large area to the north of the city. But I think we need some solid, tangible, concrete commitments from the city to work with us on where we're going to put these schools. We can't do it alone. The land has to be zoned institutional in order for us to build a school there. It can't all be mixed use. It can't all be commercial. It can't all be residential. We need some help. We need to work together in identifying land. And there's going to have to be a school up in that area B. I mean, that's a huge area we can't shuttle all those kids down to the 4-5 Academy on the very southern tip of Decatur. There needs to be a school in Area B. And so we need a commitment from the city in order to help make that happen. And then thirdly, we need time. We cannot find a place to educate these kids overnight. And so if I were to support an annexation plan, I would like to do it in a delayed or phased process, so that the date in which annexation would take effect, or at least the date in which those kids would become our kids to educate, would take place maybe 2 or 3 years out. Because we're going to have to raise the funds, possibly another GO bond, build the schools, hire the staff. It cannot happen overnight. So the 3 things that I need to see happen in order for me to support annexation is a commitment as far as funding, real estate, and time. And then to answer one of the prior questions about what questions do I have, you know, the biggest outstanding question for me is, I want to know how is our tax base going to change if this map, as it's drawn now, were to be passed. I don't have a clear sense yet as to what the commercial tax base would be in terms of the percentage. I understand we're around 15%-ish now. Will that map bring us up to 30%? Does it bring us up to 20%? I don't know. And so I would like to see a little bit more detail in terms of what numbers, what kind of revenue, what kind of breakdown can we anticipate as far as commercial versus residential tax bases can we anticipate in the event that this map were to pass. So that's where I am on annexation.
Okay, we're done here. I think that. Great job, Garrett and Annie and Patty. I'm Julie Rain. I've been on the school board for about 11 years, and long before I was on the school board, I was a big proponent that the city needed to annex more commercial property because we've just had an unhealthy tax digest for a few decades. And this isn't a new topic. This has been around since I can remember, probably back when I was in high school here. So we have had to grapple with it over the term of the past 11 years a couple of times. And in 2012, we, as a school board at the time, approved what the city was looking for, which was basically the areas around the Publix and around Suburban and those adjoining properties. And we felt comfortable with that. This annexation is much different because it goes much further north and to the east, goes down to the big Kroger, grabs DeKalb Medical. You know, I don't know if DeKalb Medical would even contribute to this because they are a nonprofit. I know that the Kroger, that area would probably be very good financially, but we also pick up many apartment complexes that do garner us a lot of kids. And just to echo what she said, we definitely would need a property in that area B, and if you're looking at about 700 kids just for that, the new areas, national stats say that to add on to a school or to build a new school, you're looking at about $30,000 a child. So that's $21 million that we'd have to spend just for the new areas. We are, as has been so eloquently said, we do need space. We all know that we are busting at the seams. I think we've been the fastest growing school district in the state for 4 years now. So we just don't know what the future holds, if that's going to slow down. It doesn't look like it is. My concern with Area B is it is big and we don't know how fast it's going to grow. But if you've read the Medline study, which is fascinating reading, and I have a copy if you want to see it afterwards, it's a great plan by the ARC to develop this in a much healthier environment than what it is, which is a bunch of urban heat islands right now and empty parking lots for the most part. But it is something to be considered. I think that their estimation is in 25 years, population will grow by maybe 20,000. I think it starts at 29,000, no, 63,000 to 80,000, which isn't huge, but there are so many unknowns and nobody has that crystal ball to know what's going to happen there. So those are my concerns. And I agree with Annie on the things that I would want from the city in terms of their help with us financing this, especially from the get-go, finding property, and not rezoning things from commercial to residential. But we also have to realize that commercial property does include apartments. Apartments are commercial. So anytime you get a lot of residents, you're going to have higher services for the city as well as the school system. So I would really like to see some of the numbers on the overall tax digest when we're said and done with this. I think that information is going to come out tomorrow. And I would like to have an assurance, because I know we can't really commit future boards and you can't commit future commissions, but I would really like to have some tax relief for our current Decatur residents, or to hold it steady as these things occur down the road for expenses related to the school system as well as the city. Because the city's going to have to grow, and I am concerned about our bond indebtedness as a city as a whole, and how much more we can borrow to build these schools and build a new fire station if a new fire station is needed, or whatever the city needs. So as long as we're working together on this and we have all the information, we're moving forward in the right direction that we're talking about it. And I really appreciate you folks having us here to talk about these issues. Anytime you get your elected officials in the same room with your community, it's a good day. So thank you.
I'm Lewis Jones. I'm on the school board, and I think that they've done an excellent job of laying out the issues, and I agree with most of what's been said. I find this to be an extraordinarily difficult issue, mainly because it seems that we're forced to make a decision without all the facts and all the planning that we'd like to do. And the problem, of course, is that our hand is forced by the cityhood movement and the rest of the county. We don't have the luxury necessarily to wait. So something's going to have to be done to set the long-term boundaries of the cities, of this city, and it's going to have to be done sooner rather than later. And if you take that as your premise, it just puts you in a very hard spot if you're not entirely sure about what's the right way to go. I am persuaded long-term that annexation is a good thing. There's no doubt that we need to balance the tax base, that we need more commercial properties, and we do have serious financial challenges as we are. We do need new facilities, but we're going to need new facilities whether we annex or not. When we look at the projections, the number of kids added through annexation is a relatively small part of the growth that we're experiencing. So the need for new buildings and those expenditures is a reality with or without annexation. Financially, what annexation does is to help pay for it. I also think that if you look at the Medline plan and if you think about the long-term future both of Decatur and of Area B, and I ask myself, who would I like to guide the development of that area? I think there's no question that Decatur is going to be better off if Decatur helps to shape that area rather than the county, just because Decatur's awfully good at that. So at long term, I don't have any serious doubts. Short term, I do. Short term, you know, I feel that we're in a position of having to vote for something that is in our best interest long term without any plan in the short term how to accommodate the influx of children that we're going to get if we vote to annex now. And again, it's a pickle. I don't have a solution, but I'm very concerned about it. I do think the best solution so far that I've been able to come up with is to talk about delaying the effective date of the annexation as to the schools. That is a thing that can be done so that the annexation can be effective immediately or after the calendar date or whatever it is for the city, but that the date of annexation for purposes of school attendance can be delayed and can be set at a different time. And I think that we need to very seriously explore that so that we have time to prepare for the kids that we're going to welcome into our city. I also would like to see, it hasn't been done yet, but I would really like, I'm very concerned, notwithstanding all the things that tell me that this is the right thing to do in the long term. I'm very concerned what it does to the character of our schools, and we've invested so much in our neighborhood schools. When we annex these properties and bring these kids into our system, we have to figure out where they're gonna go. And it's not just, they're not just fungible things that can be, we just, increase each school by some amount. I mean, these kids are largely up on the north side in these large apartment complexes. And they're gonna have to go somewhere. I'd like to see a plan. I'd like some initial thinking at a very preliminary stage, but I'd like to know that we have a plan about what to do. And we don't have that yet. I think that there might be some thoughts that people have. So I'm not saying that it's an impossibility. I'm just saying I haven't seen it, and I need to see it. I believe there probably is a way. And again, I'm certain that in the long term, this is the direction we need to move. It's probably not that satisfying, but that's what I am.
Good afternoon, Scott Drake. I'm on the City Commission for the north side of Decatur. Having grown up in Decatur, I mean, I've seen a lot of change happen around here, so I'm not very concerned with the challenge of change. I think that's something we handle very well in our planning, and our city staff and the school board, and everyone can handle that change. But some of the issues that have brought up tonight, I think, or today, have, are the same issues we all have. I think we have said in meetings that the city's going to be there to help the school system if this path is taken. We don't, it has been, I think a very challenging time for the school system in a good way, but I think the annexation opportunity provides us more solutions on how to handle that handle the school system issues right now. So annexation in that sense, can be a good thing. It has been sort of pushed on us very fast. I don't think, I don't think if we weren't getting the pressure from the outside community with some of the issues that DeKalb County is facing and Atlanta's facing, that we would necessarily be talking about this. We wouldn't have the cityhood issue maybe if DeKalb County was in a little bit better shape. But we are having that, and we're experiencing that, and so this is kind of coming at a certain opportunity where it might help us relieve some of that. I think some of the issues that you brought up about annexation, which we've talked about before, zoning issues in new areas, trying to, if we have a commercial area and it's zoned commercial right now, we need to try to keep it that way. We need time once this happens to kind of get out of that sort of honeymoon phase and see what comes about things on that. Phasing things in from the school, Lewis, we were talking about that outside. I think we actually did something like that in the Parkwood neighborhood, because they had some students that were going to graduate from Druid Hills in the next few years, so we were actually able to kind of slow that down or post that date. Tax relief for citizens, I mean, I think for senior citizens, I think is a big part of it too. I did a map one time for a meeting that showed the properties in downtown Decatur, and I think I have it on my iPad, but it showed all of the properties that don't contribute to our tax digest. And it's great. Churches, Agnes Scott, Columbia Seminary, I mean, those are all great assets to our community, but there's a lot of property that does not contribute. So either we got to annex or go change the federal law so that we can start taxing our churches or something. I probably shouldn't say that. Just joking. But anyway, that, I mean, if you look at that map in downtown, I was amazed when I did it, and I just started messing around with it on the computer, and all of a sudden, the majority of downtown is colored in big blocks that don't contribute. So that's tough on us, and I think that's something we need to look at. It's going to be a challenge. This is going to be new, but I don't think, I think as we've seen with most things in Decatur, we can handle a challenge. We could handle big things like MARTA coming in. We can handle different things going on, resurrecting our downtown. So I think this is a challenge. The good thing is we've got two groups working on it. The school board's been great, and the staff and everyone over there. I mean, we've learned a lot. I think they've learned a little bit about us. We've learned a lot about the pains and successes that y'all have. So, and again, there's a lot more that has to go into this. I mean, we can put a map together and send it to the Capitol, and then some other group could change it, and then those people in that area could vote they don't want to be involved in it. So it's not just sort of what we say is sort of the final rule. We're just trying to look at the best solution, short and long term, that we can come up with. So a lot of good input here, obviously a lot of good minds out there and ideas we want to hear as well. So I'll turn it over to Fred.
All right. Fred Boykin, I represent the north side of the town, as Scott does. I want to single out Kathy Gannon for a minute because she represents my district, and I think if we had a lot more people on the board of commissioners, we might not have quite the issue that we have, because I think some of it, in a lot of respects, we're not driving this bus, and we are kind of following behind these cityhood efforts. At the end of the session last year, I would have bet $1 million that we weren't going to be addressing any kind of new cities in DeKalb County, and that blew up. And you know, it's a bit of a land grab. There's a lot of folks looking at what they can do to carve up DeKalb County, and we're right in the thick of it. So, you know, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation. Either way, there's change is going to come, and I tend to look at it, I guess, in a broad brush that there's an opportunity if we do annexation, and there's much less opportunity if we don't. I've been involved. I was vice president of the DBA back in the Decatur Business Association back in 1994, so I've been around here a long time, and we've always had this issue of residential taxes versus commercial. And you know, that's been very difficult in the community. I never ever liked the fact that it's darn difficult to have our police or fire or teachers or anybody like that be able to live in the city because of the tax structure. And the only way to even have a fair opportunity to reduce any of that is to look at increasing the commercial. The revenue and expenses report is what we would gain, what we would cost to do this. That report's been delayed. Peggy Maris, our city commissioner, our city manager, is usually very, very, very good about things like that. But her mom passed away a couple of weeks ago, and that took a toll on her, and rightly so. She took some personal time. But that report's due out very, very soon. I think some of these questions that we're talking about are premature. They've got to be answered, but there are a lot of steps to even get to the point where we can realistically answer them. We've got to vote on this map. It's got to be submitted to this committee of 5 legislators. Mary Margaret Oliver is one of them. She's represented parts of DeKalb County for a long time, but there's 4 other legislators on there that are from all different parts of the state. We don't have a dog in this hunt. You know, they were changing that map up until midnight at the end of the session last year, so who knows what this map's going to look like when it comes out the other end of the sausage grinder. Then it's got to be voted on. You know, we don't vote on that. It's going to be the people that would be annexed that are going to vote on it. So the questions that Annie and the school board, those questions have to be answered, but we're not there yet. So in my mind, some of that is a little bit premature. It's a little bit, to me right now, kind of like counting your chickens before they're hatched. So I'll leave it at that.
So just to follow up on that, and Annie's question about assurances for school sites, I mean, that seems to be a big, one of the keys here is, and Fred, to kind of follow up on, is it really too early to press you on that? You know, is there any way that you can tell us that there will be assurances for school sites, or is it just too early?
Well, the questions have to be answered. I mean, they have, like they said, you know, they are kids, they're individuals that need a room, need the chairs, need the teacher. You have to have a physical plant to do that. But on the other hand, if we sit here and start talking, you know, this looks like the prime spot. I mean, you know, are we going to get in the question of eminent domain? Because if I was a developer, I'd be buying that spot up tomorrow. So why
Yeah, we don't want to talk publicly about it.
You know, so I
Do it in executive session.
I don't think that, and I just think it's a bit premature.
Somebody tell them they need a microphone, you can hear what they're saying.
Okay, sorry about that. I usually talk pretty loud.
Well, kind of following up on that, I guess a question is what authority or what, I guess, influence does the city commission have in relation to the state and this board that's been convened to decide annexation among all of the Atlanta areas that are looking at annexation. I mean, could the state give us a bunch of students that without ample area to build a school? I mean, I guess what's the interaction?
I don't know if they're gonna consider that. I mean, one thing that Peggy, our city manager, has been trying to do is do this in good faith. We were asked to present a map of the areas that we are interested in annexing by a certain point in time. We've tried to do that. We've you know, published a map. It hadn't been officially voted on by the school board or the commission, but we submitted a map. I read in the paper that Avondale still hasn't approved their map. Tucker is fighting La Vista Hills, but La Vista, you know, Hills, Briarcliff coordinated. Now you've got Druid Hills wanting to be annexed by the city of Atlanta, so now the city of Atlanta is looking at the same corner of North Decatur and Claremont that's in the Decatur map. So, you know, those 5 folks are gonna come up with recommendations that they're gonna submit to the state legislature, and then the legislators for DeKalb County are gonna have to, in my understanding, got to approve it next. If it's a piece of local legislation, they've got to approve it. And as Patty said, we have almost zero representation. You know, I mean, we're just a smidgen on most of these representatives' constituencies.
Fred, if I could make just a comment, the committee that is looking at the cityhood, the 5 members that Fred mentioned, I think that is their only charge at this point, is to look at La Vista Hills and Tucker. It's my understanding, and this was discussed at the DMA meeting this past week, was that the annexation is going to be really sort of considered separately. There are a lot of meetings going on. There are, you know, City of Atlanta officials. I think we had representation with the Medlock Area Neighborhood Association. I think Mayor Basquette and Peggy Maris went to that this past week, as well as, I think Mary Margaret Oliver, Elena Parent was there meeting, as well as some representatives from City of Atlanta, because that's being, you know, they're not currently drawn in any map. One of the things that State Senator-elect Elena Parent said to me was that they are looking for us to come together and have some sort of agreement about annexation, the 2 boards, the City Commission and the school board. It would be a conversation to have with our the people that we get to try to bring forward any annexation referendums that would then go before the voters to say, is there a way that we could put into this legislation a phased approach? Because that's not really that is not up to the city commission, unlike, you know, with the smaller annexations. But if it's going through state legislation, then we have to ask for, and ask very nicely for, the things that, you know, that we are looking at. And you know, again, whatever we pass and whatever we decide to go through with, whether it's specifically this map, or, you know, if the school board decides they can't support the whole annexation map, if that's whatever it turns out, then all of that is going to be what we take forward and sort of lobby really our DeKalb delegation now for support, and work with other cities that are looking at annexation, and kind of how does that puzzle all fit together.
But following up on his question, can you be forced to take areas that weren't in your area? Like, let's say
Like
Medlock, like the state legislature
Now
wants us to take Medlock. Does the city commission
We
have a
couldn't
say in that?
We couldn't be forced.
Okay.
But they could say, if you want any of this, you have to take it. So that, I mean, that's, you know, they can't say this has to be on your referendum and take it or leave it. I mean, but they could say, if you want us to take a referendum forward, this is what we're willing to take forward.
It's all or nothing. So if they come back and say, you know, we've taken your map and now it looks like this, you can either have it we're not.
Right. So in that regard, I guess, it's not, they can't force us to have a referendum, but they can, say, this map isn't really what we think is gonna work in the long run for the surrounding areas, and so here's what we could support. And, and they can do that for the, not just Decatur, but Avondale Estates, for any city that wants to, put forward an annexation referendum.
And this might be a point where it's worth pointing out, a lot of people who have been following the new city initiatives, new cities, and somebody correct me if what you've heard is different, but what we've been informed is that if a new city forms, the new city owns the school facilities. But if an existing city annexes land that has a public school on it, they do not immediately own that public school.
Because we haven't paid anything towards that.
So that is a case where, using the elephant of Medlock, there's Medlock Elementary School. Is there?
I think it's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
If you're a city, if you're an existing city